Hello, everyone, and welcome to our today's webinar. Our speakers will begin shortly, but before we start, I would like to share a few important technical guidelines to ensure a smooth experience for everyone. This webinar will be recorded and shared with you in a follow-up email. And during the presentation, we kindly ask you to keep your microphone muted and your camera turned off. And the chat function is disabled. So please use the Q&A section for all your questions coming up during the webinar. And our team is happy to answer them at the end of the webinar. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Anina, and I am more in the background today during the webinar. So if you need any assistance during the webinar, please feel free to drop me a direct message on Teams or send me an email if you cannot send me the message, and I will check them during the webinar. And I'm happy to support you. And with that, I'm pleased to give over to Marlene for the webinar.
Thank you, Anina, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are very pleased to welcome you to this webinar on PFAS. Over the next 30 minutes, our objective is to help you better understand what PFAS mean for your business today, and most importantly, how to take the right actions in a practical and structured way. This is a topic that has gained significant attention recently, not because PFAS are new, but because expectations, regulations, and scrutiny are evolving very quickly. Before we start, let me briefly introduce the speakers for today. So my name is Marlene Maury. I'm a key account manager at Textiles, working closely with brands across Europe on chemical compliance and product safety. I'm joined today by two colleagues, Dr. Leo Yodza, our ecology manager, who will bring the technical and laboratory perspective, and Aline Mosh, product manager for PFAS solutions, who will guide you through the practical approaches. Just a few words about Textiles for those of you who may not know us. Textiles is a Swiss textile testing institute with a global presence. We are an independent and trusted partner for brands and manufacturers and part of the Ecotex network. Textiles and ETI together form the Textiles Group, combining laboratory expertise and certification know-how. We support companies on topics related to chemical compliance, product safety, and sustainability. And with that, let's move to the agenda. In the next 30 minutes, we will cover 5 key areas. First, a quick introduction to PFAS, what they are and what they are used in textile. Then, what is currently changing in terms of regulations and expectations. We will also look at where the main risks lie for brands and manufacturers. And finally, we will discuss how to take action in a structured and practical way. We will keep this session focused on real questions we see from brands today, with the aim of providing clear and actionable insights. And with that, I will now hand over to Leo, who will start with the fundamentals of PFAS.
Thank you, Marlene. And also from my side, a warm welcome to this seminar. Now that you have seen who we are and what we have covered today, I would like to start by clarifying one key question. What exactly are PFAS and why do they matter so much for textiles? PFAS stands for per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. In simple terms, this is a large family of human-made chemicals that share a very strong carbon-fluorine bond. Today, we are talking about more than 10,000 different PFAS structures that have been used in various industries over the past decades. The key reason why PFAS became so popular is their performance. They provide durable water repellency, oil repellency, and stain resistance. That means jackets that keep you dry in heavy rain, outdoor gear that does not get dirty easily, and upholstery that is easier to clean. But their use is not limited to apparel. PFAS are also common in leather, in food packaging, in non-stick cookware, and in many different coatings. So PFAS can show up in trims, prints, membranes, or packaging, not only in the fabric finish itself. According to a recent assessment by the European Environment Agency, around 35% of all PFAS used worldwide are linked to the textile sector. So textiles are really a major use case and, as a result, a major focus area when regulators and NGOs talks about PFAS. Next slide, please. If PFAS are so useful, why is there now so much pressure to move away from them? The short answer is because of their persistence and the growing evidence on health and environmental risks. PFAS are often called forever chemicals because they hardly break down in the environment. Once they are released, for example, during production, use, washing, or end of life, they can remain in water, soil, and sediments for decades or even longer. From there, they can enter drinking water systems and the wider supply chain. Over time, PFAS can build up in ecosystems, in wildlife, and also in the human body. In recent years, more and more scientific studies have linked PFAS exposure to a range of potential health effects, including impacts on the immune system, cholesterol levels, the liver and kidneys, and an increased risk of certain cancers. This is why authorities like the European Chemical Agency and many national regulators now treat PFAS as a group of very high concern. So when we talk about PFAS, we are not only talking about product performance, we are also talking about long-term environmental contamination and potential health risks that may persist long after a jacket or a pair of shoes has been sold. Because of these concerns, the regulatory landscape in Europe has started to change quite fundamentally, and this directly affects textile and footwear products. First, we see a clear shift from single substance regulation to a group approach. In the past, authorities mainly targeted a few well-known PFAS like PFOS and P4A. These are now largely banned or strictly restricted under the POP regulation. More recently, perfluorohexane sulfonic acid has been added to that list as well. The next step is now perfluorohexanoic acid and related substances, a group of shorter chain PFAS that were often used as replacements. On top of this EU-wide regulation, some countries are moving even faster with national rules. France has restricted PFAS in clothing, textiles, and footwear since January 26, with limits of 25 microgram per kilogram for any individual PFAS and 250 microgram per kilogram for the sum of PFAS, and 50 milligram per kilogram for total fluorine content. That means brands selling into France will need to be ready earlier and with a broader PFAS perspective. Denmark also follows a similar path with a national PFAS ban in clothing and footwear based on a 50 milligram per kilogram total fluorine limit from July 26. Again, the message is clear. PFAS containing textiles and footwear are coming under much stricter control with very low limits and tighter enforcement. For brands, retailers, and manufacturers, being compliant today is not enough. PFAS strategies must anticipate where regulation is heading, not just current rules. The key question is how this translates into concrete risks and actions for you. Marlene will now walk you through what this means from a commercial and supply chain perspective and how you can start building a practical PFAS strategy.
Thank you, Leo. So now that we've seen what PFAS are and how the regulatory landscape is evolving, the key question becomes, what does this mean in practice for your brand? There are three main dimensions to consider. First, from a compliance perspective, expectations are increasing, not only from regulators, but also from retailers. This means more testing requirements and the need to anticipate timelines to avoid delays in product launches. Second, reputation is becoming a critical factor. PFAS data is increasingly visible through NGO reports and public platforms, which means brands are more exposed to external scrutiny. And finally, product claims and communications. Statements such as PFAS-free require solid testing and verification, and it is essential to ensure alignment between what is communicated and what is actually measured. This leads to a very common question we hear from brands: am I safe if I meet current regulations? In reality, regulations today only cover a limited number of known PFAS. Many substances are still not regulated or not fully identified. At the same time, substitution is widely observed, meaning restricted PFAS are often replaced by alternative substances that may raise similar concerns. And importantly, regulatory frameworks are evolving rapidly. Thresholds and restrictions can change over time. So the key takeaway here is that compliance today does not necessarily guarantee long-term security. This is why many brands are starting to look beyond compliance and aim for a broader understanding of PFAS presence. Another key challenge is the practical management of PFAS. PFAS can enter products through multiple sources: coatings, chemical finishes, trims, or even processing chemicals. At the same time, supply chains are complex and often involve multiple suppliers across different tiers with limited visibility on chemical use. And finally, traceability remains difficult. Unintentional contamination can occur, and identifying the root cause is often not possible without testing. So even with clear specifications, PFAS can still be present in the final products. So where should you focus first? From a product perspective, higher risk areas typically include water repellent treatments, coated or laminated materials. From a supply chain perspective, key risk points are chemical inputs and finishing processes. But one of the main challenges is that these risks are not always visible or concentrated in one place. This is why a structured and targeted approach is needed to identify where PFAS may actually be introduced. And with that, I will now hand over to Aline and then Leo, who will walk you through how to approach these risks in practice.
Thank you, Marlene, and hello and welcome from my side as well. I'm very happy to be part of this webinar too. So at this point, a very common question we hear from clients is, where do I actually start? Because PFAS can feel quite complex when you consider the regulations, testing, and supply chains. What we see working best in practice is a simple structured approach in 3 steps. The first step is really about identifying your risks. This typically starts with testing, especially focusing on high-risk product types such as water-repellent finishes, coatings, coated materials, or technical textiles. And here, it's important to combine different testing methods to get a reliable first picture. The second step is assessing your exposure and understanding what the results actually mean. Not just PFAS detected or not, but where does it come from? How critical is it, and where products or suppliers are affected? This is often where brands are struggling, and in translating data into decisions. A comprehensive PFAS testing approach from the first step helps with these decisions. And the third step is then taking action with control and substitution. That means working with your suppliers to phase out PFAS, identifying safer alternatives, and improving transparency in your supply chain. So overall, the goal is really to move from a reactive approach, testing only when required, to a more proactive and structured management of PFAS risk. And this is exactly where testing plays a key role and where TestX comes into play. I'll now hand over to Leo again, who will walk you through the different PFAS testing methods in more detail.
Thank you, Aline. On the previous slide, Aline introduced a simple three-step approach: test, understand your risk, and then control and substitute where needed. Now I would like to zoom in on the first step, testing, and explain what the main PFAS test methods are and what questions they can answer for you. This slide gives you an overview of the key PFAS test methods that are currently used for regulatory compliance in textiles. The first method is total fluorine testing, often abbreviated as TF. In practice, the sample is combusted and the total fluorine content is measured by ion chromatography. The important takeaway is here that TF gives you a broad indication of whether fluorinated substances are present in your product at all, at a milligram per kilogram level. It is a powerful screening tool that aligns well with Oekotex requirements and with national rules that use total fluorine as a parameter, such as the new PFAS regulations in France and Denmark. However, TF alone does not tell you which specific PFAS are present or how they relate to legal limits. For that, we rely on EN 1760-81 from 2025. An LC-MS method with alkaline hydrolysis that measures a defined list of regulated PFAS at very low parts per billion levels. This is the method you typically need when you want to show compliance with specific EU POPs and REACH regulations. In simple terms, you can think of it like this. Total fluorine gives you a broad PFAS yes or no indication at screening level. Targeted PFAS tells you exactly which regulated PFAS are present and whether they exceed the legal limits. At TestX, both methods are implemented according to the relevant EN standards and are fully integrated into our Oekotex testing workflows. Next slide, please, Marlene. So these two methods, total fluorine and targeted PFAS, are essentially for today's regulations. But as we saw earlier, regulation is still evolving and only covers a fraction of all PFAS. So the obvious question is, how can I look beyond the current lists and detect potential future issues or substitution patterns? There's where our new non-targeted PFAS screening comes into play, and LC-HRMS analysis that you see introduced on this slide. The idea is different from targeted methods. Instead of measuring only a predefined list of PFAS, we use high-resolution mass spectrometry to screen broadly for thousands of PFAS and PFAS-related signals in one run. This approach can reveal substances that are not yet on regulatory lists, as well as potential substitution patterns. For example, when a supplier has moved from one PFAS to another that is currently unregulated but structurally very similar. Non-targeted analysis is usually semi-quantitative, which means it provides estimates levels rather than precise compliance numbers. But is very powerful for risk assessment, for identifying products or suppliers with higher PFAS loads, even if the substances are not yet regulated, for trace contamination checks, detecting low-level PFAS signals that would be missed by more limited screening, and for supplier transparency, opening up discussions with suppliers based on real analytical evidence rather than assumptions. When we now combine non-targeted PFAS screening with total fluorine and targeted PFAS analysis, we can cover the full spectrum from broad indication to legal compliance today to a more forward-looking view on the potential future concerns. Aline will now take this a step further and explain how you can turn these test methods into a practical PFAS testing strategy for you and your suppliers.
Thank you, Leo. And yes, the question here, as Leo also already mentioned, is how you translate this into practical testing strategy. So what we see is that not all clients have the same needs. It really depends on where you are in your journey. So first, we offer individual PFAS test methods as single tests. This could be one of the three methods: total fluorine, target PFAS, or the new non-target PFAS analysis. This single testing is for very specific technical questions, for example, from a retailer, a restricted substances list, or for follow-up testing, where individual test methods can be sufficient. In the second row of the table, we have what we call the PFAS regulatory suite. This combines total fluorine and target PFAS testing, and it's designed to support compliance with current regulations, particularly in markets such as the EU and also France and Denmark, of course. We can also cover regulatory requirements for other markets beyond the EU, such as US states and Canada. This solution is especially relevant for regulation-driven global brands and export-focused manufacturers selling into regulated markets. Overall, this suite is focused on ensuring regulatory compliance. And then for clients that want to go a step further, we have the PFAS 360 Safety Suite. This includes all three PFAS testing that we as Testex offer, and it gives you a much broader visibility, not only on regulated substances, but also on unknown or future relevant PFAS. This suite ensures risk mitigation and transparency. So the idea is not one solution fits all, but rather to provide a flexible approach depending on your objectives, whether that's specific technical questions, compliance, or risk mitigation and long-term strategy. If you have specific questions regarding your products and which solution might be the most suitable, please feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to support you in defining the right approach and can provide further details where needed. As you can also see in the table, for both of our suites, the PFAS tested label can be applied if defined requirements are met. I will come back to this more detail in a moment. Next slide, please. Of course, at Testex, we mainly test textiles and leather. That's our core expertise. But it's important to keep in mind that PFAS are not limited to these materials. They can be found across a wide range of materials and product components. That's why we also support testing beyond textiles, for example, chemical formulations such as coatings, adhesives, or inks, different types of polymers like polyester or polyamide, cellulose-based materials such as paper or cardboard, rubbers, elastomers, foams, and also certain consumer products or packaging materials. At the same time, there are some limitations to be aware of what we cannot test. For example, aqueous samples like wastewater, environmental samples such as soil or surface water, and food matrices are not part of our testing scope. Next slide. Yes. Another area that is becoming increasingly important is how clients and especially brands communicate about PFAS. We see more and more brands using claims like PFAS-free, but at the same time, these claims are becoming increasingly difficult to support, especially when it comes to proving them reliably. NGOs, media, and regulators are therefore taking a much closer look at what these claims actually mean. So the challenge is, how can you communicate in a way that is both credible and robust? There are really three key elements here. First, you need reliable testing data. Then your claims need to be clearly defined and verifiable. And third, transparency at product level is becoming more and more important. And this is where we support with our PFAS tested label. The label is based on independent laboratory testing against defined criteria and is available for both of our suites. It's only issued when strict requirements are met, and it is linked to product level information and the test report. So instead of making general claims, you can provide concrete, verifiable proof, which is becoming a key expectation in the market. Next slide, please. So finally, what does this mean in terms of how we, Testex, support you? At Testex, our role is not only to provide testing, but really to act as a partner along this journey. This starts with independent testing across different PFAS methods, from screening to advanced analysis. But beyond that, we also support you in understanding regulatory requirements and test results, and in defining next steps. We also help you improve transparency in your supply chain, which, as we've seen, is one of the key challenges when it comes to PFAS. And here, as Leo also mentioned, the non-target method is particularly relevant. And if you are wondering where to start, what should be your next step? A good first step is always to begin with a risk-based testing approach, then identifying your priority products and build from there. And of course, we are happy to support you in defining that approach. Now I hand over to Marlene to summarize the key takeaways from this session.
Thank you, Aline. So yes, as Aline mentioned, before we move to the Q&A, let me briefly summarize the key takeaways from today's session. So first, PFAS are becoming a major regulatory and business challenge. Compliance alone is not sufficient to fully manage the risk. Gaining visibility across your products and supply chain is essential. Adopting a structured approach helps you move from reactive to proactive management. And importantly, you don't have to manage this alone. At Testex, we support brands not only with testing, but also with guidance and practical approaches tailored to your situation. As part of this, we are currently offering a limited introductory partnership opportunity with preferential conditions. This is aimed at companies interested in adopting our PFAS 360-degree safety suits, combining all three testing approaches as explained by Aline. We would be happy to discuss with you whether this could be relevant for your company. So thank you very much for your attention. We will now open the floor to your questions. I don't know, Anina, if you have access, or Aline or Leo, to the questions, the Q&A section. Thank you.
So there were no questions coming in during your presentation, but we have received a lot of questions already after the launch last week of our new services. And of course, if someone is brave enough to raise the hand, turn on the camera and ask directly, you're very welcome to do so. Otherwise, I have just sent a question also into the chat. So can we safely accept, that we can use that it's almost PFAS free? I mean, we have to be careful with the claims, or that it's rigorously tested if we are certified already under standard 100 or another Ökotex label.
Yeah, I think that's a good question because now we are facing as well the EMCO directive, which come into force, and there is also mentioned that such statements like free from or something like that is not how to say, because it's really absolute or vague. It's not really saying that it is true, because also if we are testing PFAS, there's no claim that we can say it is really free from PFAS. It is only free from them what we have tested, yeah, and not from them which we don't know. Yeah? And this is a case where I think it could be a problem in the future to saying free from something, yeah, like free from PFAS. And I would suggest that this could be a problem. And this is also our direction. We don't want to say PFAS free. We want to say it is tested for PFAS. Yeah, so PFAS tested. This is the reason for, that we have chosen this formulation.
Thank you very much, Leo. And also regarding to the Oekotex label already, are the requirements also suitable for the regulations, let's say for France, for example, or even beyond for the compliance? Is it enough for the market access, what they get in Oekotex?
Yeah. For Oekotex, they have always the strictest limits. Yeah, so I can confirm that if you have an Oekotex certification, then you are also confirmed with the regulations coming up, like the France one, which was just introduced also in January 26 in the Oekotex regulations. So yeah, I can confirm that if you have a Oekotex certification, then you are also confirmed with that. But if you want to go a little more beyond on that, because Oekotex certifications are looking on production more or less, yeah, and not on the final clothing. Yeah. So if you want to have there a label, then we can provide that with our product.
Very well. Thank you so much, Leo. And then I will raise one of the last questions that were coming in up front. If you expect a complete phase out of PFAS in textiles, or will there remain some essential uses in the long term?
Yeah, also good question, I would say. I take this again over. Yeah, there is just a complete PFAS phase out, yeah, because we are seeing that in France with these limits in parts per billion. This is a really strict limit, and that means we are going there on a phase out, and we see that also in the US market. Some US states are claiming the same, that you have to do the same like we are doing now for the France regulation. And in the future, I don't see any possibilities for PFAS compounds in textiles. Yeah, so this is a phase out. Yes.
Thank you very much. And yes, I saw that there were no more questions coming up in the chat. I will hand over again to Marlene.
Thank you, Anina and Leo. So, of course, if you have any further questions after this session, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you again for your time today, and we look forward to continuing the discussion with you.
Thank you also from my side.
Yes, also from my side, thank you for joining.
Thank you, and have a nice day, afternoon,
Have a nice
or
day.
evening.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Take care.